Three houses still stand at the heart of old Redmont, each one a small monument to the boom years. First came Cornelius Ashbridge, the railroad man, a Mesa Southern superintendent who quietly bought into the freight contracts hauling silver out of Esperanza. His house, built in 1882, was deliberately modest by Gilded Age standards. He wanted Denver bankers to see him as careful, not lucky. Next door rose the grandest of the three, built by Augustus Pemberton, who struck silver at Esperanza and had the good sense to sell before the market turned. Turret, wraparound porch, glass shipped in on Ashbridge's own rail line. Last came Walter Greaves, the merchant who financed half the town on credit. His mansion, finished in 1891, marked the peak of his confidence. Just 2 years before the Sherman Silver Purchase Act's repeal nearly ruined him. Word spreads fast when money moves in. Within a decade, the block around them filled with lesser Victorians, clerks, lawyers, mine foremen, all building near the three men who'd made it big, hoping a little of that fortune might rub off.
Hello, and welcome back to Redmont. This is a bit of a surprise episode. The Summer Solstice patch has just come out, and of course I couldn't resist the temptation to try to get back into Redmont and see how my custom map with its custom surfaces fared during the transition. I'm going to say up front, it was a bit touch and go there for a little bit. I wish I was recording during this process because I could have shown you what some of the problems I was having with. The main problem was when I immediately loaded into the game at a distance, everything looked more or less okay. But the problem was, as soon as I zoomed in to really close distances, there was this tiling effect that was happening, and it was just completely ruined the surfaces. It just graphically looked just awful. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to go about fixing this. I just happened to watch $2.20 had a couple of videos ago he put out for the patch, and he was doing some editing outside the playable area on his map, and he was doing it through using developer mode to load his save game into the map editor. So I thought I'd give that a try, and the very first time I did it, I was able to get my save game into the editor and do a few adjustments, but I wasn't really prepared to do it right at that moment when I did it. So I figured, you know what, I'll just come back tomorrow and work on it tomorrow. That was a horrible mistake because when I came back to it the next day and tried to do it, the game just kept crashing over and over and over and over again. And I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do these edits, but finally I managed to get it to work. I adjusted the surfaces so the tiling didn't happen, and here's the new look for the map. The changes are pretty subtle. There definitely is a bit more definition to the nooks and crannies here, the folds in the landscape. You could definitely see more, so I think it looks pretty good now. There's definitely some differences in how the surfaces blend together, how the rock, dirt, and the grass surfaces, they all blend together. It's definitely been a change here. You could see a bit more of the rock surfaces poking through the dirt surfaces here, so you see a few more cracks in the surfaces and stuff like that. I think it looks really nice. The blending is a little different than it was before. At first, I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but now that I've worked with it for a few days, I'm okay with this. I think it looks fine. I'm just happy that I'm being able to get back into the game, because the way the map looked before I was able to do these edits, it wasn't going to be playable. I would have had to probably abandon Redmont. So I'm very, very happy that I was able to get this edit done. Also, I'm kind of happy now that I didn't actually go ahead and release this map. There was some bugs with the map that caused people's games to crash, so I kind of pulled it off the mod store. If it was still on the mod store, it would have had those buggy textures baked into it, and anybody playing on it, I don't think you would have been able to fix this. Doing the editing in the map editor, trying to get the save game in there, the game is not designed to do that. Let's just say that. Here I'm just playing around with the lighting, and you can see we could definitely see a lot more definition in the mountainsides here. So I'm very happy with the improvements to the map overall. This is a great improvement. And just a quick look here from top down, looking straight down onto the map. This, I think, really, you could really see the differences here. See all the definition in the valleys here and stuff like that. So very happy with how this looks. And yeah, it's a huge relief. And we now have paintable surfaces. So I'm going to do a few tests here, see how this looks on my map. And I found this is kind of hit or miss here. It looks fine on the dry grass surfaces. I don't really have an issue with it here. But the problem is, you have to remember, these paintable surfaces, where the color palette of these are designed to work for the vanilla map, not my custom surfaces here. So there's some issues that I started noticing. Like right now I'm painting down the dry grass surface, which on my map doesn't look dry. It actually looks like the wet areas. So that's one thing. The sand color, the dirt colors, they look fine on the grass, like I said, but the problem is, as soon as you start seeing them in relation to the actual cliff and dirt textures that are baked into the map, all of a sudden you notice an issue. The colors are off, right? They don't work together very well. So these are going to be of limited use to me. I can use the grass surfaces, but the dirt and sand surfaces, they're going to be of limited use. Right here, you could probably, this is going to be the best example here, as I just do a little detailing along the cliff edge here, and you'll immediately see the problem. Especially with the sand. Like the sand, in comparison to the actual natural earth tones that are present in the map, it is really kind of flat. It doesn't really blend with what's already here. I'm sure I'm going to be able to figure out some uses for them on this map, things I can do with them, probably more in the urban settings around the city, but definitely not for detailing the natural landscape. And since I had spent so much time editing the map, I decided just to go ahead and do another Redmont episode. There has been a literal flood of new assets coming into the game recently, most of them by one creator here, and it's a perfect opportunity to kind of do a bit of detailing on some of the older neighborhoods, or what are supposed to be some of the older neighborhoods of Redmont. I'm just looking around here. I got some of these neighborhoods I used the Southwest pack to build out, but I also have these neighborhoods where I used a lot of vanilla assets, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the way any of this looks. It was always meant to be temporary, and it was always meant to evolve as the city grew. I'm at a point where I think some of these neighborhoods, I can lock them down a bit more and make them a bit more historic, but also just get rid of some of the vanilla buildings here, because a lot of this stuff is just not working very well. I'm going to start deleting out buildings to make room for our new historic districts. And there's one modder in particular. We're going to be using quite a few of his buildings. The first one here is Joe Gesk. I hope I'm saying that correctly. The pronunciation is a little uncertain, but I hope it's correct. He has pumped out so many new assets so quickly, it's just kind of mind-boggling. And they're really high quality assets as well. These are just, houses are just absolutely beautiful. He has also started his own YouTube channel, and if you search for Just Joe, you should be able to find him. He's currently building out an alternate history version of the town of Astoria, Oregon. So go check out his channel. He's definitely a creator in the space here that deserves everybody's support. He's already given us so much with these assets. So go check out his channel. I'm not going to call out every custom asset I'm using here, but I will leave a little info panel here for you to stop and look at if you want to find out more about the assets I'm using. I'm just happy to be able to create real custom, historic neighborhoods now for the city of Redmont. This is going to be so much fun moving forward. Up to this point, it's been very difficult to make cities with any sense of a true historical past to them. Building styles change over the decades. They go through different styles, different fads, depending on what people are into during whatever decade they happen to find themselves in. And walking through a neighborhood in any particular city, you usually can judge the actual age of the neighborhood just simply by the style of buildings. The style of buildings I'm placing down here, these would be fairly common, probably very early part of the 20th century, probably 1920s, 1930s at the latest. Redmont is a fairly young city. It's not even really 200 years old at this point. Most of the city's growth would have been fairly recent, probably within the last 50 years. So when it comes to these older styles of buildings, they're not going to occupy a huge chunk of the city. They're only going to probably occupy a few square blocks each. Redmont would still be a very small town when most of these building styles were in fashion. So there isn't going to be like huge neighborhoods of them. It's a few square blocks of each as the city quickly outgrew each style of architecture. Also, just from gameplay mechanics, the scale of these cities are obviously the way the game works. You kind of scale everything back, make it a little smaller. So I don't need massive neighborhoods. I just need a few square blocks of each type just to represent it and show how the city evolved over time. I've been trying to get a little more organized on how I go about building the city. The first phase is focusing on actually building out the infrastructure, laying out the roads, placing down the buildings, and then later on, once all that's in place, come back and fill in the detailing. But unfortunately, my scatterbrain here, every once in a while, I'll just get distracted and start doing some random detailing like I'm doing right down here. Okay, let's move on to another historic neighborhood. Now, I did these out of order. There wasn't really a plan when I was building this out. This is going to be the older neighborhood. First one was kind of like 1920s, 1930s. This one's going to be like the 1880s. And we could sort of imagine this, the Gilded Age. This is when the railroad would have been built in Redmont. And so this would have attracted a whole lot of money into town, like the train station. I think we talked about that in one of the historical segments, how much money actually was flowing in. And this is kind of a representation of this. This is a Victorian era neighborhood. Once again, Joe's come through here with these amazing, just absolutely stunningly beautiful, like Victorian style buildings. These are just so beautiful. And these are obviously the mansions we talked about at the beginning here of the some of the more wealthy people. This neighborhood would be very small Victorian style homes, as we move into the 20th century, they fell out of fashion like quite heavily, and people just start tearing them down. So there wouldn't be very many of these, especially in a city like Redmont in Western United States or Western North America. Most of these sorts of neighborhoods didn't really survive. So I got about, I think, 6 square blocks here. That's all I'm going to be building. Now, Joe went with these kind of Victorian row homes here. The beautiful buildings. I kind of wish there were some more houses, but I'm not going to complain. I'm just happy to have the assets. For the alleys behind the houses, I didn't really want a road that cars would use, so I'm just going to go for the wide pedestrian path here. I think it works fairly well. And I think these mansions here, I think they need a little more color, so we're just going to make them a little more vibrant. I'm also going to expand their footprint just so they fill in their lots a little nicer. I've been using the surface brush to paint in the lawns for most of the neighborhoods here, but for these mansions, I think they need a little higher quality lawn, so I'm just going to use some actual surfaces. I want a lot of the yellow grass to show through. This is a fairly dry environment, and there are such things as water restrictions, but these rich people, they're not going to be bothered by water restrictions, so they're just going to go ahead and do what they're going to do. I've just noticed I have what looks like seasonal flooding here on the floodplain of the river. It's one of the reasons why you don't build on a floodplain. I'm not sure what's really happening here. There seems to be a change in the mechanics of the water. This wasn't flooding before, but it is now. I mean, it is fairly realistic for where it is in the city. Unfortunately, it's destroyed some of the buildings here. I think I've lost a McDonald's. Oh no. I'll have to rebuild that. One problem that's been plaguing Redmont for some time now is I have a labor shortage. I have an unemployment rate of something like 0.5%, and there's just not enough employees for all the jobs. So I've been doing some work here to try to bump up the population numbers. I don't want to expand the city too much quite yet. I'm not quite ready for the real true modern expansions for the city. I'm still trying to establish what it looks like historically, but I'm also starting to creep into more modern times here. So I'm adding a bit of density in some areas where it makes sense. Unfortunately, I lost a bit of footage here. I don't know what happened to the recording. It just kind of vanished. I'm using some of the UK apartment blocks here. They hold a fairly large number of people in each building, so it's an easy way to bump up population numbers without expanding the city too much. I don't know. I tried several things here to kind of bump up the population during this episode, and I at one point got the unemployment rate all the way up to 1.2%, but it quickly fell all the way back down to 0.4%. People are moving out at an alarming rate. There's nothing in the statistics that I could see that indicates why that might be the case. So it's a bit of a mystery. I'm going to keep working on it. I really want to get on with a major industrial expansion for the city, but with the unemployment rate being so low, it makes it really difficult to do. So I got to work on this a bit more and figure out what's going on here. I might have to do more residential expansion before the industrial, or I might just go ahead with the industrial and maybe that might attract more people. I'm not really sure. I'll have to figure it out. Across the river on the west side of Redmont, I have the same sort of issue with the residential neighborhoods. I don't like these. I'm going to come back in here and rebuild them using the new assets. I'm going to be using this neighborhood rebuild here as an opportunity to increase a little bit of density where it makes some sense along some of the major roads here, right near the hospital. I think it makes some sense that the density might be increasing gradually over time. I'm also going to be adding a few new commercial buildings, not too many. I'm not really focused on a commercial build right now. So just trying to figure out how to finish off some of these neighborhoods. I'm still a little uncertain exactly how permanent the residential neighborhoods are on this side of Redmont, so I'm not going to go too heavy on the detailing over here. I might have to come back and redesign these neighborhoods again at some future point. There's always that one house that just will not snap to the road no matter how hard you try. I also have a few of these oddly shaped lots here, which the residential houses don't really fit well into them. So this also seems like a good opportunity to increase a bit of density and fill them with apartment blocks instead. We have this cell tower asset here, which is a communications tower, so for internet access. But what I realized is it's small enough that I can embed it inside other buildings, so it looks like the towers have been built on top of apartment buildings or office towers or something like that, which is very true to life, so I'm kind of happy about that. Since I added the fourth bridge crossing here, this residential neighborhood has felt kind of orphaned. So I'm going to tear this all out and we're going to increase the density and rebuild it with apartment buildings. I'm trying to go for an 80s style type of building here. Some of the Japanese assets work really well for this. So these are nice, kind of nondescript. They don't really stand out. They just kind of blend into the background. And they kind of do have a bit of an 80s style aesthetic. And here's a building I don't see used very often. It's the kindergarten from the Chinese set. This is a nice building. It actually acts as a park. Good way to sneak in a park without actually adding any green space. I realized I was deeply in the red for high school education, so it seemed like a good opportunity to add a new high school. I like the look of this one, but where I place it here, it seemed to be really kind of crowding out the residential homes, so I decided to move it over one block and put it closer to the main roads. For homes to represent buildings built in the late 20th century, say from the 1980s onward, the Southwest residential pack here is probably my go-to. They look exactly like homes built during the 1980s. For neighborhoods a little farther out from the core areas where we have the more historic buildings, we need to transition into more modern looking homes and buildings. Okay, for the remainder of the episode, I'm going to be focusing on doing some detailing. In the beginning, my main focus was on growing the city out, trying to grow it organically and naturally as it might have appeared to grow over time. Adding a lot of detailing didn't really make a lot of sense for that. But now that things are getting a little more established, some of these neighborhoods I feel are becoming a little more permanent, and I'm not really planning on changing them too much. So what I'm planning on doing here is at the end of every episode from now on, I'll pick out one or two blocks that I feel are going to stay fairly consistent moving forward and detail these up to a fairly high standard. And over time, as the city becomes more and more complete, I will fill in more and more of the detailing as I go here. On this little awkward triangle of land here, which I've left in this state from the very beginning, my intention here was always to fill it with a car dealership. This particular asset here is it the Southwest Pack? I think this is the Southwest Pack. I always thought that building looks like a car dealership. So that's what I'm going to be building down here. With the new road surface, I have to figure out a new detailing technique to detail out paved surfaces here. My goal here is to simplify the process. Detailing can become a huge time sink if you let it. I can sink into it for hours and hours and just like detail up a few square blocks. Unfortunately, it doesn't make for a particularly interesting video for most people. I'm still a big fan of detailing. I think without the detailing, it's what makes your cities unique and makes your cities your own. And if you don't take some effort to do some detailing, you'll just never ever going to achieve that sort of look in your cities. So I think it's an important part of building a city, but also I need some sort of structure to it to simplify it, make it more structured, so I'm not wasting hours and hours of time just detailing up one square block. So for paved surfaces and for surfaces in general, I've sort of like figured this out for gravel surfaces, but what I'm trying to figure out here is like 3 steps. The first step is the actual paved surface itself, whatever one I'm choosing, and then 2 detailing steps on a lighter step and a darker step. And I feel like that is enough. It becomes a standardized process, easy to repeat, and doesn't take a lot of time to do. Trying to figure out and teach myself more techniques like this. This bit of oddness down here was left over when I created the fourth bridge crossing. It used to be a road, and I figured the easiest thing I could do with it is to turn it into a pedestrian roadway. I think random empty lots are an important detailing step. Every city has them. No city is wall-to-wall buildings. There are always empty lots. They're important negative spaces that allow, if you think about the skyline that you're trying to create, the empty spaces allow you to be able to highlight certain buildings, draw people's focus to certain parts of the city, and there are also nice opportunities to add a bit of like whimsical and unique detailing here. Like you could fill these in any way you want. They could be torn down buildings, they could be construction sites, they could be just gravel parking lots, they could be any number of things. Okay, and to finish off here, I'm just going to do a bit of final detailing around these apartment buildings on the opposite side of the river here. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode. It's been a lot of fun. I'm so happy I've been able to get back into this particular map, that I actually got it to work. It was touch and go there, so I am happy to see Redmont continue. Redmont's about to go through some interesting changes in the not too distant future, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. I'm definitely looking forward to showing it off to everybody. Anyway, I will see you all in the next episode. Everybody take care, and I will see you next time. Bye.